There's something almost magical about standing beneath an ancient archway, a structure so old it seems to hum with secrets. These towering portals weren't just built to hold up weight. They were designed to transport you, to mark the boundary between the ordinary and the extraordinary. For centuries, they've stood as silent witnesses to empires rising and falling, to pilgrims and warriors passing beneath their curves, each stone whispering stories we're only beginning to unravel. Today, we're stepping through 30 of the most intriguing archways the ancient world left behind, gateways that defy time and challenge everything we think we know about history. Picture this: you're walking through a desert, the sun beating down, when suddenly you see a colossal arch carved with symbols no one can fully decipher. Who built it? Why here? What did it mean to the people who passed beneath it? These questions aren't just academic, they tug at something deeper in us, a primal curiosity about the people who came before. Some of these arches were triumphs of engineering, others acts of devotion, and a few might have been meant to keep something out, or maybe to keep something in. This isn't just a tour of old stone. It's a journey into the minds of the ancient world, where every curve and carving holds a clue. We'll wander through hidden ruins, decode forgotten symbols, and even debunk a few myths along the way. By the end, you won't just see these arches, you'll feel them, the way travelers and explorers have for thousands of years. So take a deep breath. Whether you're a history buff or just love a good mystery, these portals are waiting to sweep you into their story. Ready to step through, the Arch of Titus rises like a silent sentinel at the entrance to Rome's ancient forum, its weathered marble still radiating imperial power 2,000 years after it was built. This isn't just a monument, it's a masterclass in storytelling carved in stone. Look closer, and the arch reveals its secrets, intricate reliefs showing Roman soldiers parading through the streets with treasures looted from Jerusalem's sacred temple. Menorah, trumpets, even the sacred table, all meticulously depicted as spoils of war. But this wasn't just art, it was propaganda, a brilliant way to cement Emperor Titus's legacy by immortalizing his military triumph over Judea. What makes this arch so fascinating isn't just its age or craftsmanship, it's how it functioned as ancient social media. Every citizen who passed beneath it absorbed a clear message: Rome was invincible, its enemies humiliated. The carvings weren't subtle. Jewish captives bow in submission while Titus stands elevated in his chariot, crowned by the goddess Victory herself. Yet there's irony here too. While the arch celebrated the destruction of Jerusalem, Jewish tradition tells us Titus died an agonizing death, punished for his arrogance. Poetic justice perhaps etched into history alongside his supposed glory. The arch's survival is its own miracle. Unlike so many ancient structures, it avoided being quarried for medieval buildings, possibly because it was incorporated into a fortress. Later, Renaissance artists studied its proportions, and Jewish communities would avoid walking under it for centuries, a quiet protest against its symbolism. Today, it stands as both an UNESCO World Heritage Site and a pilgrimage spot, where visitors can literally trace their fingers over the same stonework that Roman citizens once touched. The Arch of Titus doesn't just commemorate history, it forces us to confront how power, memory, and stone intertwine across millennia. High on the windswept Bolivian Altiplano, where the air is thin and the skies stretch endlessly, stands the Gateway of the Sun, a 12-ton monolith that seems to defy both time and logic. Unlike the triumphal arches of Rome, this massive doorway wasn't built to celebrate conquest. Instead, it reaches skyward like a stone puzzle, its intricate carvings hinting at a civilization that understood the heavens with uncanny precision. Carved from a single block of andesite, the gateway's central figure, often called the staff god, stands surrounded by winged attendants, their faces turned toward the sun. But who were they worshipping? What cosmic secrets were they trying to preserve? What makes this archway extraordinary isn't just its size or craftsmanship, it's the precision with which it interacts with the sky. During the winter solstice, the first rays of dawn align perfectly with the gateway's center, illuminating the staff god as if bringing it to life. Some researchers believe it functioned as a celestial calendar, marking agricultural cycles or sacred dates. Others argue it was a literal portal, a threshold between the human and spiritual worlds where priests performed rituals to commune with deities. Then there are the more controversial theories that the carvings depict advanced astronomical knowledge or even contact with otherworldly beings. The mystery deepens when you realize the Tiwanaku civilization abandoned this site long before the Inca rose to power, leaving no written records. Modern attempts to recreate the gateway's construction using ancient tools have failed, raising questions about lost technologies or forgotten methods. Even its original location is debated. Some think it was moved, that it once stood as the centerpiece of a vast temple complex now buried under centuries of sediment. Standing before it today, you can't help but feel the weight of its silence. Unlike European arches shouting military glory, the Gateway of the Sun whispers in a language we're still learning to decipher. It doesn't boast, it asks. What did the Tiwanaku see when they looked at the stars? What ceremonies unfolded beneath this arch, and why does its meaning feel just out of reach, like a constellation you can almost but never quite trace? In the heart of Rome, where the bustling energy of the ancient city once pulsed through crowded streets, stands the Arch of Janus, a structure so unlike any other that it feels almost otherworldly. This isn't your typical single-sided triumphal arch. Four identical faces stare out in all directions, an architectural enigma that mirrors its namesake, the two-faced god Janus, who could see both past and future. But why four faces? That's where the mystery grips you. Janus was the god of beginnings, transitions, and doorways, a deity who presided over every threshold, whether physical or symbolic. The arch's four passageways likely represented the intersection of major roads, a literal crossroads where travelers, merchants, and soldiers would pass beneath the watchful gaze of the divine. Some historians believe it marked the boundary of the Roman Forum's marketplace, a liminal space where commerce and spirituality collided. Others argue it was a ceremonial site where rituals honored Janus during times of war or peace. When Rome went to battle, the doors of Janus's temple would swing open. When peace returned, they'd shut. This arch might have served a similar purpose, a silent barometer of the empire's fate. The craftsmanship is staggering. Made of gleaming white Proconnesian marble, each facade is identical, adorned with niches that once held statues, possibly of gods or emperors, though no one knows for sure. Unlike the Arch of Titus, which screams conquest, the Arch of Janus whispers ambiguity. There are no battle scenes, no spoils of war, just those empty niches like unanswered questions. Was it a meeting place, a shrine, a toll booth for spiritual passage? The lack of inscriptions deepens the intrigue. What's most haunting is how the arch embodies duality, not just in Janus's two faces, but in its very survival. In the Middle Ages, it was repurposed as a fortress by the powerful Frangipani family, its hollow core filled with battlements. Later, it was nearly dismantled for building materials, saved only when archaeologists intervened. Today, it stands restored but still enigmatic, a silent witness to Rome's endless cycles of reinvention. Walking through its passages today, you're not just crossing a physical threshold, you're stepping into the Roman obsession with transitions, with the moments that change everything. And somehow, those four arched doorways still feel alive, as if Janus himself might be watching from the shadows, one face turned toward glory, the other toward oblivion. The Arch of Hadrian in Athens stands at a crossroads of history and identity, a graceful marble boundary between two worlds, erected in honor of the Roman Emperor Hadrian's deep affection for Greek culture. This archway is more than just a monument. It's a conversation in stone between conqueror and conquered, between old glories and new power. On one side, an inscription declares, "This is Athens, the ancient city of Theseus." On the opposite face, it counters, "This is the city of Hadrian and not of Theseus." Two identities, one arch. What makes this structure so mesmerizing isn't just its dual inscriptions, but the way it physically and symbolically divides Athens. To the northwest lies the ancient Greek city with its acropolis and agora, the heart of classical philosophy and democracy. To the southeast stretches the Roman-era city with its libraries, temples, and baths, Hadrian's lavish gifts to the intellectual capital he revered. The arch isn't merely decorative, it's a threshold between eras, a deliberate marker of where Greek history ends and Roman influence begins. Architecturally, the arch is a hybrid masterpiece. The lower half echoes the sturdy, no-nonsense Roman style, while the upper portion dissolves into intricate Corinthian columns and delicate scrollwork, a nod to Greek elegance. Hadrian, a passionate Hellenist, ensured his tribute reflected mutual respect rather than dominance. Unlike the militaristic arches of Titus or Constantine, this gateway celebrates cultural exchange, a rarity in an empire built on conquest. Yet there's subtle propaganda here too. By aligning himself with Theseus, the mythical founder of Athens, Hadrian positioned himself as both protector and heir to Greek legacy. The arch's placement wasn't accidental. It lines up with the temple of Olympian Zeus, a project begun by Greek tyrants centuries earlier but finally completed by Hadrian. Walking through the arch toward the temple, one literally followed in the emperor's footsteps, a symbolic journey from Athens past to its Roman present. Modern visitors often pause mid-passage, straddling that invisible line between worlds. The arch still serves its original purpose, making you acutely aware of standing between histories. It's a reminder that even the mightiest empires couldn't resist the gravitational pull of Athens' legacy, and that the most enduring power isn't always the kind that marches in on sandaled feet, but the kind that bows to wisdom older than itself. In the sleepy Italian town of Benevento, where modern life moves at a leisurely pace, the Arch of Trajan stands as a vibrant snapshot of imperial ambition frozen in time. Unlike many ancient arches worn smooth by centuries, this one bursts with detail, its marble surface alive with scenes so crisp they could have been carved yesterday. Erected around 114 AD to honor Emperor Trajan's expansion of the Via Appia, this isn't just a monument, it's a visual biography, a stone documentary of one of Rome's greatest builders. Every inch of the arch tells a story. On one panel, Trajan shakes hands with local leaders, his toga draped in statesmanlike folds, a masterclass in political theater. Another shows him distributing grain to needy citizens, a carefully staged display of imperial generosity. But the most striking scenes unfold along the inner faces. Here, the emperor appears as a godlike figure, welcomed by deities into the pantheon. It's propaganda at its most sublime, blurring the line between mortal ruler and divine being. What makes this arch extraordinary isn't just its artistry, but its strategic purpose. It marked the spot where the Via Appia, Rome's legendary highway, entered Benevento, a place every traveler would pass. Imagine dusty merchants, marching legions, and weary pilgrims pausing beneath these carvings, absorbing messages of Trajan's power without reading a single word. The reliefs functioned like an ancient billboard campaign, reinforcing loyalty at the empire's edges. Yet there's intimacy here too. Unlike Rome's colossal triumphal arches, this one feels almost approachable, its human-scale proportions inviting closer inspection. Local touches abound. Benevento's patron goddess Isis appears alongside Roman deities, a nod to regional cults Trajan wisely embraced. Even the architecture whispers compromise. The Greek-style pediment atop the arch merges with traditional Roman forms, a visual metaphor for cultural blending. The arch's survival is its own epic. Earthquakes, medieval reuse as a city gate, even Napoleon's troops camping beneath it. None erased its stories. Today, as sunlight dances across Trajan's marble smile, you can almost hear the echoes of sandals on ancient pavement, the murmurs of travelers who paused here 2,000 years ago, gazing up at the same stone saga we're still deciphering. Rising at the foot of Rome's Capitoline Hill, the Arch of Septimius Severus looms with a quieter, more calculating grandeur than its flashier neighbors. Built in 203 AD to celebrate the emperor's military campaigns in Parthia, this arch doesn't just commemorate victory, it weaponizes art to rewrite history. Look closely at the intricate relief spiraling up its columns, and you'll notice something unsettling. The emperor's sons, Caracalla and Geta, appear repeatedly beside him, a united front. But today, Geta's face is hacked away, stone-scarred by the rage of his brother, who erased him from history after fratricide. This arch isn't just propaganda, it's a palimpsest of power, betrayal, and the fragility of memory. The carvings themselves are a masterclass in political spin. Severus's Parthian wars weren't the sweeping triumphs depicted here, they were grinding, costly campaigns that stretched Rome's resources thin. Yet the arch transforms them into divine destiny. Winged victories crown the emperor, while Roman soldiers drag shackled Parthians through carved streets. One panel even shows Severus addressing his troops, his arm raised as if channeling the gods themselves. The message, conquest, wasn't just strategic, it was celestial will. What's equally fascinating is how medieval Romans misinterpreted the arch's purpose. By the Middle Ages, the lower half was buried under 12 feet of debris, leaving only the upper arches visible. Locals dubbed it the Seven Lamps, believing it marked the mythical grave of Rome's founder, Romulus. This accidental rebranding saved it. While other ancient monuments were dismantled for building materials, the arch's association with the city's mythical origins granted it protection. When excavations finally uncovered its base in the 1800s, workers found medieval shops built right into its plinths, a literal layering of history. Standing before it today, you're struck by its duality. The north side, exposed to centuries of pollution, wears a grimy patina, while the south side gleams almost golden in sunlight. It's an apt metaphor for how history polishes some truths and obscures others. The arch outlasted Severus's dynasty, outlived the empire itself, and even escaped the Renaissance's quarrying frenzy, not because of its artistry, but because people kept grafting new meanings onto its stones. Perhaps that's the real lesson here. Unlike the Arch of Titus, which shouts its message unequivocally, Severus's monument is a chameleon. It's been a victory monument, a brother's tomb, a marketplace, and finally, a relic. Its survival hinges not on the emperor's glory, but on humanity's endless hunger to find its own stories in the past. The next time you see a photo of its weathered reliefs, look for the empty space where Geta's face should be. That silent void tells just as much as the grandest carving. The Arch of Galerius in Thessaloniki is a stone tapestry of war, its marble panels alive with the chaos and choreography of ancient combat. Built around 290 AD to celebrate Emperor Galerius's victory over the Sassanid Persians, this arch doesn't just commemorate battle, it plunges you into the heart of it. Unlike Rome's triumphal arches, which often distill conquest into symbolic gestures, here every detail is visceral. Horses rear, spears splinter, and Persian warriors tumble beneath Roman boots in a whirlwind of carved motion. But look closer, and you'll realize these aren't just battle scenes, they're carefully crafted narratives designed to spin defeat into divine triumph. Take the infamous Battle of Satala, where Galerius's forces ambushed the Persian king Narseh. The panels depict Romans fighting with disciplined precision, their formations unbroken while the Persians collapse in disarray. Historical accounts tell a different story. Galerius initially suffered humiliating losses. His army routed until a surprise night attack turned the tide. The arch erases those early failures, presenting the campaign as an unbroken chain of victories. Even the Persian king's family appears in carved captivity, their robes delicately rendered, a subtle humiliation masquerading as artistry. What's striking is how the arch reflects the tetrarchy's peculiar power structure. Galerius shares the spotlight with his co-emperor Diocletian, their figures repeated across panels like a visual mantra of shared rule. This wasn't one man's glory, it was propaganda for the tetrarchy itself, a system where 4 emperors supposedly governed in harmony. The arch's octagonal design reinforces this, its 8 piers symbolizing unity from every angle. Yet the subtext is undeniable. Galerius's panels are more dynamic, his exploits more prominently placed. Even in collective celebration, ambition whispers through the stone. The craftsmanship is astonishing. Hellenistic influences soften the Roman brutality. Fallen Persians are carved with almost poetic grace, their agony aestheticized. One panel shows Galerius receiving a kneeling Persian ambassador, but the emperor's hand rests not on a weapon but a scroll. It's a brilliant touch, conquest framed as civilization's gift. Time hasn't dulled the arch's impact. Today, as trams rattle past its remains, the scenes still pulse with energy. The missing panels lost to earthquakes or reused in Byzantine walls only deepen the mystery. What stories did they tell, and why does this arch, smaller than Rome's giants, feel so immediate? Maybe because it wasn't built for gods or eternity, but for the merchants and soldiers who walked beneath it daily, absorbing its message with every glance. Power isn't just won on battlefields, but in the stories we carve afterward. The Arch of Constantine doesn't just stand near the Colosseum, it leans on it both literally and symbolically. This mammoth structure, erected in 315 AD to celebrate Constantine's victory at the Milvian Bridge, is a Frankenstein's monster of Roman art, pieced together from the spoils of earlier emperors. Look closely and you'll spot the paradox, a monument celebrating a new Christian era, decorated with recycled pagan sculptures, the roundels looted from a monument to Hadrian. The friezes pilfered from Marcus Aurelius's lost arch. Even the 8 majestic Dacian prisoners standing atop the columns, repurposed from Trajan's Forum. This wasn't just recycling, it was a deliberate act of historical branding, stitching Constantine's reign to Rome's greatest leaders like a claim staked in marble. Yet the arch's true genius lies in what it doesn't show. There's no crucifix, no overt Christian symbolism, just a subtle shift in language. The inscription credits Constantine's victory to divine inspiration, a carefully vague phrase that could appease both traditionalists and the growing Christian faction. The battle scenes themselves are telling. Compared to the intricate older reliefs, Constantine's new carvings are clunkier, less naturalistic, almost hurried. Some scholars argue this reflects a declining artistic tradition. Others see it as intentional, a rejection of pagan realism in favor of a stiffer, more symbolic style that would dominate medieval Christian art. What's often overlooked is how the arch functioned as a spatial anchor. Positioned along the triumphal route, it forced processions to pivot sharply toward the Colosseum, symbolically linking Constantine's reign to Rome's most iconic arena of imperial spectacle. Later rulers took note. Charlemagne modeled his Ochen Palace gates on its design, and Napoleon's Arc de Triomphe echoes its proportions. Even modern architects borrow its playbook. The layered, narrative reliefs of the Washington Square Arch in New York owe it a quiet debt. But perhaps the most haunting detail is hidden in plain sight. Among the reused sculptures, one Hadrianic roundel shows the emperor hunting a boar. Directly below it, Constantine's artisans added a new panel, the emperor addressing the people. The message, where Hadrian pursued leisure, Constantine served. It's a masterstroke of propaganda, using old art to shame old values. The arch doesn't just commemorate a battle, it marks the moment Rome's visual language began to shift from the earthly to the eternal, from the individual to the divine. Walking beneath it today, you're not just passing through stone, you're stepping through a crack in time where one empire ended and another, stranger one began. The Arch of Titus doesn't just dominate the Iraqi landscape, it defies it. Stretching 150 feet across and rising 10 stories high, this colossal brick parabola has outlasted empires, earthquakes, and even 20th century bombs. Built by the Sasanian Persians in the 6th century, it was the vaulted crown of a palace so vast, Arab conquerors later dubbed it the White Palace, believing its gleaming facade could be seen from miles away. But what's truly astonishing isn't just its size, it's how it was built. Without scaffolding or mortar, Sasanian engineers layered millions of bricks in a self-supporting curve, using a technique so advanced that modern architects still debate how they pulled it off. This arch wasn't just a doorway, it was a power move. The Sasanians ruled one of history's most sophisticated empires, rivals to Rome and Byzantium, and Ctesiphon was their glittering capital. The vault's sheer scale was designed to awe. Foreign ambassadors would pass beneath its shadow, their necks craning upward before being received by the king. The bricks themselves whispered luxury, each fired with precision, their subtle gradient from dark to light creating an illusion of even greater height. And the acoustics, legend says a whisper at one end could be heard clearly at the other, a feature likely used for royal proclamations. War nearly erased it. During the Iran-Iraq conflict of the 1980s, the arch stood perilously close to the front lines. Later, looters chipped away at its bricks for relics, and in 2015, ISIS bulldozers rumbled terrifyingly close. Yet the arch endured, its stubborn resilience mirroring the culture it represents. After the Sasanian fall, Arab conquerors repurposed its palace as a mosque. Ottoman troops used it as a barracks. Each wave of history left scars, but the vault refused to collapse. Today, conservationists face a race against time. The arch's southern wall collapsed in the 1800s, leaving it open like a giant stone mouth mid-yawn. Groundwater weakens its foundations, and every sandstorm erodes its surface. But there's hope. Recent 3D mapping projects aim to preserve its geometry digitally, while Iraqi engineers experiment with traditional brick formulas to stabilize it. Standing before it now, you're struck not just by its grandeur, but by its fragility, a single, soaring testament to a civilization that dared to build the impossible, then left it trembling on the edge of eternity. Rising from the sun-baked plains of Provence, the Arch of Orange feels almost like a Roman glitch, a monumental slice of imperial power dropped inexplicably in what was once the empire's hinterlands. Unlike the arches of Rome, which stood at the heart of political theater, this first-century marvel was built to impress a very different audience, the rebellious Gallic tribes freshly conquered by Caesar's legions. Its weathered limestone tells a story not just of victory, but of psychological domination, every carving designed to remind locals who held the reins. What stops you mid-step are the military trophies, bundles of captured weapons, armor, and shields carved with such detail you can almost hear the clatter of swords being piled at the victor's feet. These weren't generic symbols. Archaeologists believe they accurately depict gear used by local Celtic warriors, a deliberate humiliation. The archer's frieze is even more pointed. Roman soldiers lead chained Gallic prisoners past scenes of naval battles, a reminder that resistance was futile on land or sea. Yet there's irony here too. The very tribes it sought to intimidate became its unlikely preservers. While Rome's urban archers were scavenged for medieval buildings, this rural survivor was spared, its isolation becoming its salvation. Location is everything. Orange sat at a strategic crossroads linking Italy to Spain, and the arch wasn't just decoration, it was a billboard for imperial might aimed at travelers. Scholars debate whether it celebrated a specific victory, possibly Tiberius's suppression of a Gallic revolt, or served as a permanent "Welcome to Rome" sign. Either way, its scale was calculated to dwarf local architecture, making even the tallest chieftain feel small beneath its shadow. the arch's backstory hides in plain sight. Look closely at the attic's inscription, and you'll find the name Tiberius chiseled over an earlier erasure, likely the original honoris damnatio memoriae, his legacy literally scratched out. Even in this provincial outpost, Rome's political dramas played out in stone. Today, the arch stands eerily intact, its original bronze letters long gone, but its message indelible. Walk around to the rarely seen north side, and you'll find carvings of piled Celtic shields so finely detailed you can trace the woven patterns, a conqueror's nod to the craftsmanship of the conquered. It's this duality that lingers, a monument built to break spirits, now revered as a masterpiece, its brutality softened by time into something resembling respect. The Arch of Caracalla in Volubilis stands as a stone paradox, a Roman monument in North Africa, celebrating one of history's most notorious emperors, yet softened by the hands of local artisans who couldn't help but make it their own. Erected in 217 AD, this towering gateway honors an emperor whose reign was marked by fratricide, erratic cruelty, and a fleeting attempt to win public favor through grand gestures. Yet here, far from Rome's judgmental senate, the arch takes on a different life. Its Corinthian columns and classic pediment scream imperial authority, but look closer. The carvings whisper with Berber influences, the stonework bears the fingerprints of Mauritanian masons, and even the Latin inscription shares space with subtle nods to local deities. What makes this arch extraordinary isn't just its hybrid artistry, it's the context. Volubilis wasn't some military outpost. It was a thriving cosmopolitan hub where olive oil merchants rubbed shoulders with Roman bureaucrats and Berber chieftains. The arch straddled the city's main decumanus, forcing every visitor to pass beneath Caracalla's stone gaze. Yet the propaganda here feels almost desperate. The inscription touts the emperor's boundless generosity, a reference to his edict granting Roman citizenship to all free inhabitants of the empire. Historians now see this as a cynical tax grab, but in Volubilis it resonated. For local elites, the arch symbolized belonging, a tangible claim to Rome's prestige. The carvings tell a quieter story. Unlike the militaristic reliefs of European arches, here we see Caracalla distributing coins to citizens, a scene echoed today in Moroccan souks where elders still hand out alms. The emperor's toga drapes in Roman perfection, but the faces in the crowd, they're distinctly North African, their features carved with an intimacy suggesting local models. Even the triumphal chariot, a standard motif, includes a detail you'd never see in Rome, palm fronds, a nod to the Mauritanian landscape. Time has been both cruel and kind to the arch. Earthquakes toppled Volubilis's grandest structures, yet this gateway endured, its survival likely due to medieval locals repurposing it as a fortress gate. The 18th century Sultan Moulay Ismail looted its marble for his palaces, but the arch's core remained a hollowed-out shell that somehow feels more honest without its imperial veneer. Today, storks nest atop its crumbling pediment, their raspy calls replacing long-forgotten imperial proclamations. Walking through it now, you're struck by the irony. Caracalla's name is forever tied to brutality. He murdered his brother Geta and slaughtered Alexandria's citizens on a whim. Yet this arch, his most intact monument, stands not in Rome but in a place where his legacy was rewritten by the very people he sought to impress. The stones don't lie, power fades, but the art of adaptation, that endures. The Arch of Tiberius stands as a ghost in Rome's archaeological record, a monument so thoroughly erased by time that its very existence feels like a rumor. Unlike the grand arches of Constantine or Titus, which dominate tourist itineraries, this one lingers only in fragments. A few scattered blocks near the Temple of Saturn, some ambiguous entries in ancient texts, and a debate that simmered for centuries. Erected around 16 AD, it likely honored Germanicus, Tiberius's charismatic nephew and military prodigy, whose victories in Germania momentarily quenched Rome's thirst for revenge after the devastating Battle of Teutoburg Forest. But why is this arch commemorating such a pivotal moment nearly invisible today? The answer lies in the politics of memory. Tiberius was a reluctant emperor, paranoid and unpopular, while Germanicus was everything he wasn't: dashing, beloved, and dead by suspicious means at 33. The arch's construction during Tiberius's reign feels almost like a defensive gesture, an attempt to graft his legacy onto his nephew's heroics. Yet the structure's sparse remains suggest it was either hastily built, deliberately neglected after Tiberius's death, or cannibalized early for other projects. Even its location is contested. Most scholars place it near the forum's western end, where it would have framed processions entering the sacred space, but others argue it stood closer to the Capitoline, a quieter statement in a city accustomed to shouting its triumphs. What little we know about its design comes from coins minted during Tiberius's reign, depicting a single-bayed arch topped by a statue of Germanicus in a triumphal chariot. The imagery is telling: no bold battle scenes, no piles of captured arms, just a solitary hero elevated. This wasn't an arch about conquest, it was about legitimizing a faltering dynasty. The subtlety backfired. While Germanicus's legend grew, his widow Agrippina famously carried his ashes through Rome, sparking public mourning. Tiberius's association with the arch faded. By the time Caligula, Germanicus's son, took power, the monument had already become an afterthought, overshadowed by fresher propaganda. Modern visitors to the forum often miss the arch's remnants entirely, their eyes drawn to flashier ruins. But stand near the three weathered travertine blocks identified as its possible base, and you're standing at the intersection of memory and erasure. The stones don't whisper of Germanicus's brilliance or Tiberius's insecurity. They're silent witnesses to how quickly glory can crumble when it's built on borrowed light. Perhaps that's why this arch fascinates. It's not just a ruin, but a lesson in how even marble can't outlast indifference. The Arch of Augustus in Rimini doesn't just mark an entrance, it defies time. Built in 27 BC, this weathered travertine gateway holds the distinction of being Italy's oldest surviving Roman arch, a silent sentinel that's witnessed empires rise and crumble. Unlike the bombastic triumphal arches of Rome, this structure served a practical purpose. It was the ceremonial northern gate of Rimini, where the Via Flaminia, Rome's lifeline to the Adriatic, pierced the city walls. But don't let its simplicity fool you. Every inch of this arch whispers strategic genius, from its unadorned elegance to the way it subtly announced Roman dominance to travelers entering from the fractious north. Standing beneath its single-barrel vault, you're struck by what's missing. There are no elaborate battle scenes, no gilded inscriptions boasting of conquests. Instead, the arch's power lies in its understatement. The smooth, almost severe facade was originally topped with a bronze statue of Augustus in a chariot, but even that was more nod than grandstand. This wasn't just architecture, it was psychological warfare. For weary merchants or diplomats arriving from Gaul, passing beneath that unflinching arch drove home an unmistakable message: you are now on Rome's turf. What's fascinating is how the arch embodies Augustus's building philosophy. While later emperors favored flashy monuments, Augustus preferred infrastructure that blended function and propaganda. Rimini's arch anchored the Via Flaminia, a road critical for moving troops and taxes, but it also framed the city as a jewel in Rome's crown. The choice of location was deliberate. Rimini wasn't just any colony, it was a springboard for Roman expansion into the Po Valley, making this arch both a welcome sign and a warning. Time has stripped away its original grandeur. The Attic inscription dedicating it to Augustus is long gone, and medieval modifications saw its sides incorporated into later structures. Yet the arch's endurance is its own triumph. When Allied bombs rained on Rimini during World War II, surrounding buildings crumbled, but the arch stood firm, its foundations as unshakable as the empire that built it. Today, cars still rumble through its opening, a modern echo of the carts and sandals that once traversed this threshold. The Arch of Augustus doesn't just bridge past and present, it reminds us that real power often speaks loudest in stone, not shouts. Tucked between the cypress-lined roads of the Roman countryside, the Arch of Malborghetto doesn't announce itself with grandeur, it murmurs. What began as a simple 4th-century arch along the Via Flaminia has lived multiple lives, its stones reshaped by hands across 1,500 years of upheaval and reinvention. Unlike the monolithic arches of Rome, this humble structure wears its history like layers of weathered parchment. Its original purpose, likely a way station for travelers or a monument marking the spot where Constantine, marching toward Rome in 312 AD, supposedly saw his famous vision of the cross, the divine sign that would convert an empire. But the arch's true magic lies in what came after. By the Middle Ages, the arch had been swallowed whole, transformed into a fortress by local lords who recognized the strategic value of its thick Roman walls. They built upward, adding crenellations and arrow slits, turning a symbol of imperial unity into a stronghold for petty feudal squabbles. Walk inside today, and the hybrid architecture tells the story. The original Roman brickwork juts abruptly into medieval stone, a literal collision of eras. Even the name Malborghetto, meaning unfortunate little town, hints at its turbulent past, a place caught between warring factions and shifting allegiances. The arch's connection to Constantine is tantalizing but elusive. Some historians argue it marked the exact location where his army camped the night before the Milvian Bridge battle, the moment Christianity pivoted from persecuted cult to state religion. Others see it as a later tribute built by grateful Christians memorializing the emperor's vision. The truth may be simpler: roads need markers and arches make good ones. Yet the legends persist, woven into local lore like vines through its cracks. What's undeniable is how the arch embodies survival. When the Roman Empire frayed, it became a church. When invaders swept through, it morphed into a fortress. Renaissance farmers used its hollow core as a barn, their livestock rubbing against pagan and Christian carvings alike. Today, it houses a small museum, its displays nestled between stones that once echoed with Latin commands, medieval battle cries, and the quiet prayers of peasants seeking shelter. Standing before it, you're struck not by its size, it's dwarfed by Rome's triumphal arches, but by its stubborn refusal to be just one thing. The Arch of Malborghetto doesn't commemorate a single moment. It's a physical timeline, a reminder that history doesn't march in straight lines but spirals, looping back on itself until every stone holds a dozen stories. The next time you see a photo of its patchwork facade, look past the weathering. Those aren't cracks, they're seams where one era stitched itself to another, leaving a monument that's gloriously, messily alive. The Arch of the Sergii in Pula isn't the grandest Roman arch you'll ever see. It doesn't tower over a bustling forum or loom above a battlefield, but step closer and you'll discover why this delicate 1st century BC gem is one of history's most intimate architectural whispers. Tucked between a cafe and a boutique in Croatia's coastal city, this golden-hued arch feels almost like a secret, its intricate carvings telling not of empire-wide conquests, but of one family's fierce pride and sorrow. Commissioned by a wealthy Pulan woman named Salvia Postuma Sergii, it honored her 3 brothers, all military officers who served under Augustus, one of whom likely perished in battle. Unlike the bombastic propaganda of Rome's imperial arches, this is a monument to personal loss, its elegance a quiet rebellion against the anonymity of war. What catches your eye first are the Corinthian columns, their acanthus leaves so finely detailed they seem to flutter in the Adriatic breeze. Then the frieze, a procession of oxen led to sacrifice, their heavy forms carved with a tenderness that humanizes the ritual. But the real storytelling hides in the Attic's inscription, where Salvia's name appears alongside her brothers, a rare public acknowledgement of a woman's role in commemorating history. The arch's proportions are deliberately smaller than Rome's. This wasn't built to intimidate, but to invite pause. You can almost picture Salvia standing here centuries ago, tracing her fingers over her brother's names as ships unloaded spices in the harbor behind her. Miraculously, the arch avoided the fate of so many Roman structures. While Pulla's amphitheater was quarried for medieval buildings, the Sergii arch was spared, possibly because it had already been woven into the city's fabric. By the Middle Ages, it formed part of a gate in Pulla's walls. Later, it became the backdrop for noble weddings. Even the Renaissance sculptor Pietro di Martino used its design as inspiration for his work in nearby Zadar. The arch's survival speaks to its emotional resonance. People kept finding new reasons to protect it. Today, the arch feels like a conversation across time. Standing beneath its curve, you'll notice something unexpected. The stone bears faint grooves from centuries of carts passing through, a reminder that this wasn't just a monument, but a living part of Pulla's streets. At night, when modern cafes string lights around its columns, the arch glows like a lantern, its carvings flickering with shadows. It's a testament to how memory endures, not just in grand gestures, but in the quiet persistence of a family's love, etched into stone and stubbornly refusing to fade. The Arch of Marcus Aurelius in Tripoli stands as a quiet defiance against time, its honey-colored stone still glowing under the North African sun nearly 2,000 years after it was built. Unlike Rome's grand imperial arches, this monument feels almost personal, its compact scale belying the weight of history carved into every inch. Erected around 165 AD to celebrate Aurelius's victories over the Parthians, the arch is a masterclass in storytelling through stone. The reliefs are so crisp you can trace the folds of the emperor's toga, the sinews of sacrificial bulls, and even the intricate tread on soldiers' sandals, details that make the distant past feel startlingly immediate. What makes this arch extraordinary isn't just its preservation, but its journey. Originally part of a sprawling Roman forum in modern-day Tripoli, it survived earthquakes, the rise of Islam, and centuries of neglect. Then came the Ottomans, who didn't just leave it standing, they moved it. In the 1600s, Governor Ahmed Pasha ordered the arch dismantled and reassembled block by block in what's now the city's old quarter, a rare act of reverence from an empire that often repurposed ancient stones for mosques or forts. The relocation wasn't flawless. Some panels were installed upside down, but the arch gained new life as a centerpiece of Ottoman Tripoli, its Roman carvings overlooking bustling silk markets and coffee houses. The reliefs themselves reveal a more nuanced Marcus Aurelius than the philosopher-emperor of history books. Here, he's a conquering general, overseeing the surrender of Parthian nobles whose faces are carved not with humiliation but quiet dignity. One panel shows him performing a sacrifice, his expression serene amid the chaos of war, a deliberate contrast to the aggressive propaganda of earlier arches. Even the decorative motifs whisper subtlety. Olive branches entwine with weapons, a visual metaphor for Aurelius's belief that peace was the ultimate triumph. Time has only deepened the arch's contradictions. During Italian colonial rule, archaeologists restored it with concrete, unintentionally giving the ancient stones a ghostly pallor. Today, it sits surrounded by falafel stands and fabric shops, its base stained by centuries of market spills, yet its upper carvings remain pristine, as if floating above the modern world. Locals call it the Bride of Tripoli, a nickname that captures its enduring grace amid chaos. Standing beneath its shadow, you're struck by how many hands have touched this arch: Roman masons, Ottoman laborers, Libyan schoolchildren sketching its curves. It doesn't just commemorate one emperor's victories, it embodies the messy, beautiful layering of civilizations that refuse to erase each other. The next time you see a photo of its sun-warmed reliefs, look past the imperial glory. Those weathered grooves, they're the real story, worn not by time's cruelty, but by generations who chose to keep it close. The Arch of the Gavii rises from Verona's ancient streets like a love letter carved in stone, not to an emperor or a god, but to a family. Built in the 1st century AD by the wealthy Gavii brothers to honor their parents, this arch shatters the mold of Roman monuments. Forget state propaganda or military glory. Every curve of this elegantly proportioned gateway whispers intimacy, its inscriptions etching private devotion into public space. What's astonishing isn't just its emotional resonance, but the precision of its engineering. The Gavii weren't emperors, they were builders, and their arch was a testament to their craft. A structure so perfectly balanced it survived earthquakes, medieval repurposing, and even Napoleon's troops using it for target practice. Look closer and the arch reveals its secrets. The proportions adhere to Vitruvius's golden ratios, each measurement meticulously calculated to create harmony. The voussoirs, those wedge-shaped stones forming the arch's curve, fit together so tightly that not even a blade could slip between them, but the true marvel is the attic. Unlike imperial arches crammed with reliefs, this space bears a simple, poignant inscription. To Lucius Gavius Priscus and Gavia Maxima, their devoted sons, built this. No conquests, no deities, just names, floating above the city like a quiet rebellion against Rome's cult of grandeur. The location was no accident. The arch straddled the Via Postumia, a major trade route, ensuring every traveler entering Verona would pass beneath the Gavii name. Yet its scale feels deliberately approachable, a human-sized monument in an era of colossi. The brothers even included a clever optical trick. The arch's sides taper slightly inward, correcting the illusion of distortion when viewed from below. This wasn't just vanity, it was architectural empathy, ensuring their parents' memorial would look perfect from a pedestrian's perspective. Time has been surprisingly kind to the arch. When medieval Verona expanded its walls, the structure was incorporated as a gate, its hollow core transformed into a guardhouse. Later, Renaissance scholars studied its proportions as a model of classical elegance. Even Goethe paused here during his Italian journey, marveling at how a family's love could outlast empires. Today, café tables spill around its base, their espresso cups clinking beneath stones that have carried grief, pride, and 20 centuries of weather. Standing before it, you realize the Gavii arch's power lies in its contradictions. It's public yet personal, monumental yet humble. The brothers built it to defy oblivion, and in doing so, they crafted something far rarer than a tribute. They built a threshold where private memory and public space entwine, proving that even in Rome's shadow, the smallest stories could etch themselves into eternity. The Arch of Germanicus in Saints, France, carries a quiet resilience, a monument that refused to vanish even when modernity threatened to erase it. Originally built in 18 or 19 AD, this elegant archway honored Germanicus, the charismatic nephew of Emperor Tiberius, whose military successes and untimely death made him a revered figure across the empire. But what makes this arch extraordinary isn't just its tribute to a fallen hero. It's the fact that it nearly became a casualty of urban progress, only to be saved by sheer determination. Standing at the western end of a Roman bridge spanning the Charente River, the arch served as both a grand entrance to the city and a poignant reminder of Germanicus's campaigns in Germania. Its inscriptions praised his virtues, justice, bravery, devotion, while its simple, harmonious design reflected the classical ideals he embodied. For centuries, it weathered floods and invasions, its stones darkened by time but its message intact. Then, in the mid-19th century, progress arrived with a vengeance. The crumbling Roman bridge was slated for demolition to make way for a modern crossing, and the arch, still attached to its ancient foundation, faced destruction. Enter Prosper Mérimée, the French writer and inspector of historical monuments. Recognizing the arch's significance, he orchestrated a feat of preservation that bordered on the miraculous. In 1843, the arch was carefully dismantled, each block numbered and catalogued, then moved stone by stone to its current location just a few dozen meters away. It wasn't just a physical relocation, it was a rebirth. The reconstructed arch now stands in a quiet square, its proportions as perfect as the day it was first raised, though its original context, the bridge, the river traffic, the bustle of ancient Mediolanum Santonum, exists only in old sketches. Look closely at the arch's inscriptions and you'll notice something peculiar. The lettering honors not only Germanicus but also his sons, including the future Emperor Caligula. This was no accident. The arch's patrons, a local father and son named Caius Julius Rufus and Caius Julius Ottawanunus, were Gallo-Roman aristocrats eager to align themselves with the imperial family. Their names appear prominently, a clever bit of social climbing etched in limestone. Yet history has a way of balancing the scales. While Germanicus's legacy endured, Caligula's infamy eventually overshadowed the family name, turning this monument into a quiet testament to how quickly favor could fade. Today, the arch stands almost defiantly modest amid Saints' modern streets. Unlike the towering arches of Rome, it doesn't overwhelm, it invites. Visitors can walk right up and trace the weather-smoothed inscriptions with their fingers, an intimate connection to the past that's rare with Roman monuments. The relocation, rather than diminishing its power, somehow amplified it. No longer just a bridge ornament, it's now a solitary sentinel, holding within its curves the memory of a general loved by his troops, the ambitions of a provincial family, and the stubborn persistence of beauty against the tide of time. What resonates most isn't the arch's survival, but the choices that made it possible. Merimee could have let it crumble, dismissing it as just another relic. Instead, he gave it a second act. In doing so, he turned the Arch of Germanicus into something even its builders couldn't have imagined. A monument not just to Rome's golden boy, but to the idea that some stories are worth moving mountains, or at least carefully dismantling and reassembling them to keep alive. The Arch of Septimius Severus in Leptis Magna isn't just a mirror of Rome, it's a masterpiece that redefines what Roman art could be. Standing in what is now Libya, this monumental structure celebrates the African roots of its namesake emperor, blending classical motifs with flourishes so distinct they could only have sprung from North African soil. Unlike its Roman counterpart, which screams imperial might with militaristic carvings, this arch whispers something subtler, the pride of a hometown boy who conquered the empire, then poured its riches back into the streets where he once played. What strikes you first are the acanthus leaves, thicker, lusher, and more dynamic than anything carved in Rome. The scrolls twist with an almost unruly energy, as if the stone itself remembers the desert winds. Then there are the figures. Severus appears alongside his sons, but here, the family's African features are rendered with a forthrightness you'd never see on the Capitoline. The emperor's curly beard, his full lips, these aren't idealized Roman traits but portraits of a man whose heritage shaped him. Even the drapery dances differently. Togas billow with a rhythm that feels more like a Libyan breeze than a Tiber Valley gust. The arch's layout is a revelation. Where Rome's version hits you with a single, overwhelming facade, Leptis Magna's unfolds like a story in the round. 4 identical faces branch out in a quadriform design, each entrance welcoming travelers from a different direction, a nod to the city's role as a crossroads of Mediterranean trade. The reliefs are less about battle and more about abundance. Cornucopias spill over with North African grain, ships heavy with olive oil glide into harbor, and local deities like Ammon mingle freely with Roman gods. This isn't just propaganda, it's a love letter to Leptis Magna's prosperity, proof that the empire's wealth didn't just flow to Africa, it flowed from it. Craftsmen here had audacity Rome couldn't match. Look up at the attic's frieze and you'll spot something revolutionary. Figures carved in deep, almost three-dimensional relief, their shadows stretching dramatically at sunset. This technique, later echoed in Byzantine art, gives the scenes a vitality absent from flatter Roman panels. Even the materials defy expectation. Instead of imported marble, the arch glows with golden limestone quarried just miles away, its warm hue mirroring the Sahara's dunes. Yet history hasn't been kind to this marvel. Where Rome's arches were recycled into churches or palaces, Leptis Magna's was swallowed by sand, its lower layers buried until Italian archaeologists unearthed it in the 1920s. The sand, though, acted as a time capsule, preserving details lost to erosion elsewhere, faint traces of pigment hinting at an arch once painted in ochres and blues, a riot of color against the desert. Standing before it today, you're struck by its quiet defiance. This arch doesn't just celebrate Severus, it elevates the idea that Rome's grandeur wasn't forged in Italy alone. The next time you see a reconstruction of its carvings in some European museum, look past the emperor's gaze, those swirling vines, those sun-baked gods. They're not Roman imports, they're Africa talking back, proving that even in the heart of empire, some stones refuse to speak with an accent. The Arch of Alexander Severus lingers in Rome's collective memory like a ghost, a monument so thoroughly erased that even its exact location sparks debate among historians. Built around 227 AD to honor the young emperor's military campaigns in Persia, this arch was once described as one of the city's most dazzling spectacles, clad in shimmering white marble and crowned with a bronze chariot so radiant it could catch sunlight from across the forum. Yet today, not a single stone remains in place. What makes this vanished arch so tantalizing isn't just its absence, but the paradox it represents. A structure celebrated in ancient texts as a masterpiece of artistic and engineering ambition, now surviving only in fragments of descriptions and a handful of coins struck with its likeness. Imagine standing where it once rose, somewhere between the Palatine Hill and the Temple of Castor and Pollux, the precise spot still contested by archaeologists. Ancient writers like Hadrian gushed over its decorative program, intricate reliefs depicting Alexander's Persian victories, not as brutal conquests but as scenes of diplomatic theater. One panel reportedly showed the emperor receiving the surrender of Persian nobles, their submission rendered with surprising dignity. Another captured him distributing largesse to Roman citizens, a carefully staged moment of imperial benevolence. Unlike the Arch of Titus, which screamed triumph, or the Arch of Septimius Severus, which broadcast dynastic might, Alexander's arch seems to have projected something subtler, the image of a ruler as both warrior and peacemaker. The arch's architecture pushed boundaries too. Contemporary accounts mention an innovative double-bay design, two arched passageways side by side, a rarity in Roman construction, possibly to accommodate heavier foot traffic along the sacred way. Its attic reportedly held statues of Alexander's mother, Julia Mamaea, and his deified predecessors, a nod to the Severan dynasty's matriarchal influence. Even the materials were chosen for narrative effect, marble from Greece for the columns, symbolizing Alexander's Hellenic ideals, lunar marble for the friezes, their crystalline whiteness amplifying the relief's clarity. Then there's the mystery of its disappearance. Unlike arches repurposed into medieval fortresses or churches, Alexander's vanished completely, likely dismantled during one of Rome's many building frenzies. Some scholars speculate its marbles were pulverized for lime during the Renaissance. Others suggest it was cannibalized for Constantine's nearby basilica. The cruelest irony, the arch may have been destroyed just as interest in Alexander Severus was reviving. The young emperor, once dismissed as weak for his diplomatic approach to Persia, is now re-evaluated as a pragmatic leader who chose negotiation over needless bloodshed. What little we know comes from scattered clues. A 16th century sketch by an anonymous artist shows a fragmentary relief that might belong to the arch, a Roman soldier standing beside a Persian captive, their faces oddly serene. A few coins minted during Alexander's reign depict the arch's outline, hinting at its unusual twin-arched silhouette. And then there's the faintest whisper in the archaeological record, a single marble fragment in the Capitoline museums, carved with the tip of a spear and the edge of a shield, tentatively linked to the arch's lost battle scenes. Standing in the forum today, you can almost sense the void where the arch once stood, a gap in the city's stone narrative. Its absence forces us to confront how much of history is written not just in surviving monuments but in the spaces between them. The next time you see a coin from Alexander's reign, look closely at that tiny engraved arch. It's more than a symbol. It's a puzzle, a challenge, a reminder that even the grandest stones can vanish, while the stories they held keep tugging at us across the centuries. The Arch of the Argentarii doesn't just stand in Rome's Boreum Forum, it smolders. Built around 204 AD by the city's powerful bankers and cattle merchants, this small but dense arch is less a monument and more a stone palimpsest of fear, ambition, and deliberate erasure. Unlike the grandiose imperial arches lining the Via Sacra, this unassuming gateway pulses with quiet unease, its surface scarred by missing faces and carefully chiseled gaps where history was rewritten in real time. Every mark on its weathered marble tells a story not just of celebration, but of survival in an empire where loyalty was as fleeting as the morning market's crowds. What catches your eye first are the absences. The arch's inner faces once displayed a who's who of Severan dynasty royalty: Emperor Septimius Severus, his wife Julia Domna, and their sons Caracalla and Geta. Today, Julia and Geta's likenesses have been meticulously hacked away, their features reduced to ghostly smudges. This wasn't random vandalism, it was damnatio memoriae, the ritual erasure of disgraced figures. After Caracalla murdered Geta in 211 AD, he ordered his brother's image purged from every public space. But here's the twist: Julia Domna, Caracalla's own mother, was also erased posthumously, likely under the next regime. The arch became a stone chessboard where political fortunes rose and fell with each chisel stroke. The arch's patrons, the Argentarii, or money changers, weren't naive. They knew the risks of pledging loyalty in blood-soaked times. That's why the arch's surviving carvings hum with calculated ambiguity. One panel shows a sacrificial procession, but the offerings are generic enough to honor any emperor. Another depicts Severus and Caracalla clasping hands, a scene easily reinterpreted as filial piety rather than shared rule. Even the arch's location was strategic, near the Temple of Hercules, patron of merchants, suggesting this was as much a guild advertisement as an imperial tribute. But look beyond the propaganda and you'll find whispers of genuine devotion. The inscription honors not just the imperial family, but the guild's own leaders, men like Marcus Aurelius Severus and Publius Aelius Vitalis, whose names outlasted emperors. The craftsmanship, too, betrays local pride. The drapery on Severus's toga is carved with textile-like precision, a nod to the wool merchants who funded it, while the bull sacrifices mirror the cattle drives fueling Rome's economy. This was a monument by businessmen for businessmen, where even worship was a transactional act. Time has only deepened the arch's mysteries. Medieval locals dubbed it the Arch of the Moneylenders, weaving tales of ghostly figures hovering near its defaced panels. 18th century artists like Piranesi sketched its weathered reliefs, captivated by the way sunlight pooled in the erased eye sockets of forgotten royals. Today, as tourists squeeze past it to reach the nearby mouth of truth, the arch stands as a silent lesson in realpolitik, proof that in Rome, even stone could be edited, and that the merchants who built empires with coins understood power better than most emperors with swords. What lingers isn't the grandeur of what remains, but the violence of what's missing. Those blank spaces where faces ought to be, they're not just erasures. They're the negative image of history itself, shadows cast by the people who wielded chisels as deftly as daggers. The next time you see a photo of this arch, don't just look at the carvings. Look for the scars, they're the real story. The Arch of Dolabella hides in plain sight, a forgotten workhorse camouflaged among Rome's more flamboyant ruins. Built in 10 AD by the consuls Dolabella and Silanus, this unassuming travertine arch originally served as a simple city gate along the Servian wall. No grand reliefs, no imperial propaganda, just a functional passage with a single arched opening wide enough for carts to rumble through. But here's where its story twists. Centuries after its humble birth, this overlooked arch got a second act that would outshine even the flashiest triumphal monument. By the time Emperor Nero needed to stretch his Aqua Claudia aqueduct across the Caelian hill, the Arch of Dolabella was waiting, its sturdy frame repurposed as critical infrastructure, hoisting life-giving water high above the city. What makes this arch extraordinary isn't its artistry but its adaptability. Look closely near the top and you'll spot the grooves where massive lead pipes once nestled, transforming this forgotten gateway into a silent partner in Rome's hydraulic revolution. The aqueduct's brickwork, still clinging to the arch's upper reaches, tells a tale of civic necessity trumping vanity. While other arches celebrated conquests or emperors, this one literally carried the weight of progress, channeling water to baths, fountains, and wealthy villas. The consuls who built it could never have imagined their modest gate would one day sustain an empire's thirst. The arch's survival is a testament to Roman pragmatism. When the Aurelian walls replaced the old Servian defenses, most obsolete gates were torn down for materials, but the Arch of Dolabella's strategic position perched on the Caelian's ridge made it indispensable. Medieval locals reinforced it with rough brick patches, and Renaissance engineers marveled at how its travertine blocks, fitted without mortar, had settled into near indestructible alignment. Even today, the arch stands with a quiet dignity, its original inscription weathered but still legible, naming those long-forgotten consuls whose administrative footnote became a linchpin of urban life. Walk beneath its shadow now, and you're tracing 2,000 years of layered utility. The grooves from aqueduct pipes have softened with erosion, but their presence whispers of an empire that could repurpose anything, even a failed politician's vanity project, into something vital. There's poetry in that transformation. A gateway built for boundaries became a bridge for sustenance, proving that in Rome, even the humblest stones could find their moment to shine. The next time you see a photo of its unadorned facade, look past the simplicity. Those marks near the top, they're not scars, they're proof that history doesn't just remember the flashy triumphs, but the quiet workhorses that kept civilizations flowing. The Arch of the Golden Gate in Constantinople wasn't just an entrance, it was a stage where emperors became legends. Picture this, a towering triple archway sheathed in gilded bronze, its surface catching the first and last light of day, visible even to ships approaching the city's seawalls. Built in the late 4th century as part of Constantine the Great's new capital, this wasn't mere architecture, it was theater. Every jewel-encrusted mosaic, every shimmering metal plaque broadcast a message to those approaching the heart of Byzantium. You were stepping into a realm where mortal rulers touched the divine. Ceremony clung to this arch like the scent of incense. When emperors returned from campaign, they didn't simply march through. They paused beneath its vaults, allowing priests to drape them in sacred vestments before continuing in procession to the Hagia Sophia. The middle arch, wider and taller than the flanking passages, was reserved for the imperial retinue alone, its threshold etched with crosses and chrismons to mark the transition from earthly domain to holy city. Even the gate's mechanics were performative. Historical accounts describe its massive doors swinging open not with a groan, but with the synchronized pull of hidden pulleys, as if magic welcomed the worthy. The arch's golden veneer hid darker secrets. During the Nika riots in 532 AD, rebels used it as a rallying point, their torches staining the gilded panels with smoke. Later emperors added protective enchantments, charms etched into the keystone, relics sealed within the masonry, turning the arch into both monument and talisman. The irony, its splendor made it a target. When Crusaders sacked Constantinople in 1204, they pried away the bronze plates, leaving the stone skeleton to crumble slowly under Ottoman rule. By the 1700s, only a single weather-worn column remained, sketched by puzzled travelers who couldn't reconcile this stub with descriptions of the golden dream their ancestors had witnessed. Today, digital reconstructions hint at what was lost. The arch's upper tier reportedly held statues of Constantine and his mother Helena, their faces turned not toward the city they built but outward, as if watching for threats or perhaps for the next emperor worthy of their legacy. The base was a mosaic of tribute, captured Gothic shields, Persian silk banners, even a chain said to have once blocked the Bosphorus, all displayed like trophies in a celestial lobby. Standing where the arch once rose, modern visitors find only a busy Istanbul intersection, the occasional tram rattling over buried foundation stones. Yet the Golden Gate's true power lingers in the stories it shaped. This wasn't just a door, it was the ultimate test of imperial legitimacy. To pass beneath it uninvited meant death. To stride through by right, that transformed generals into sovereigns, men into myths. The next time you see a replica of its triple arches in some history book, don't just admire the gold, remember the whispers of those who approached it with awe, knowing that beyond this threshold, history itself could be rewritten with a single footstep. The Arch of the Tetrarchs in Split isn't just a relic. It's a stone snapshot of an empire's desperate gamble for survival. Built into the walls of Diocletian's sprawling palace on Croatia's Dalmatian coast, this unassuming archway embodies one of Rome's most radical political experiments, the Tetrarchy, a system where power was divided among 4 rulers instead of 1. Unlike the bombastic arches of Rome, which celebrated individual glory, this structure whispers of collaboration, its design mirroring the fragile balance of an empire too vast for any single hand to hold. What makes this arch extraordinary isn't its size or ornamentation. It's the symbolism carved into its very bones. 2 smaller arches flank a central passage, an architectural metaphor for the Tetrarchy's hierarchy. 2 senior Augusti and 2 junior Caesars, each governing a quadrant of the empire. The surviving reliefs show the Tetrarchs standing shoulder to shoulder, their nearly identical poses emphasizing unity over individuality. Historians note how their faces are deliberately generic, stripped of distinguishing features, a visual mantra that no single ruler was greater than the system itself. The arch's survival is a tale of reinvention. When Diocletian retired in 305 AD, his palace became a ghost of its former self, its halls echoing with the failure of his succession plan. Yet medieval locals saw opportunity in the ruins. By the 7th century, the arch was incorporated into Split's growing city walls, its Roman grandeur repurposed as a defensive bulwark against Slavic and Arab raids. The stone that once symbolized imperial unity became a shield for commoners, its original meaning fading beneath layers of medieval mortar. Walk through the arch today and you're treading on layers of political irony. Diocletian designed his palace as a microcosm of imperial order, with this arch marking the formal entrance to the residential quarters. Yet after his death, the Tetrarchy collapsed into civil war, proving that even stone couldn't enforce cooperation among ambitious men. The arch's current state, weathered yet unbroken, mirrors that contradiction. The same structure meant to glorify a fragile system outlasted the empire it was built to save, becoming instead a monument to the resilience of ordinary people who turned a failed utopia into a home. Perhaps the most poignant detail lies in the arch's missing pieces. The porphyry statues of the Tetrarchs that once adorned it were looted centuries ago, with one pair famously ending up on a corner of Venice's St. Mark's Basilica. There, these imperial figures stand forever frozen in embrace, an unintentional parody of the unity they failed to maintain. Meanwhile, the arch in Split remains, its empty niches a silent testament to the truth no emperor wanted to admit. that power shared is still power, and that even the grandest designs are just waiting to be remade by history's next chapter. The Arch of the Umayyads in Damascus isn't just a bridge between empires, it's a palimpsest where Roman ambition and Islamic artistry collide. Built into the courtyard of the Great Mosque, this soaring structure began life as part of a 1st century Roman temple to Jupiter. Its massive limestone blocks cut and placed by engineers who couldn't have imagined their work would one day frame the call to prayer. When the Umayyad Caliph al-Walid transformed the site into one of Islam's holiest spaces in the early 8th century, he didn't erase the past, he repurposed it with breathtaking ingenuity. The arch's Roman foundations became the skeleton for a new vision, its proportions subtly altered to align with Mecca rather than the cardinal directions of its original builders. What makes this arch extraordinary isn't just its hybrid heritage, it's how it embodies the Umayyad philosophy of cultural synthesis. Look closely at the masonry. Roman floral motifs intertwine with early Islamic geometric patterns, their shared love of symmetry creating a seamless dialogue across 6 centuries. The arch's spandrels, once carved with images of Roman victories, were carefully plastered over and adorned with Quranic inscriptions in gold Kufic script, not as an act of erasure but as a layered conversation. Even the stones themselves tell stories of adaptation. Archaeologists have found Roman columns turned on their sides to serve as lintels, their pagan carvings hidden within the walls like buried seeds of the past. The arch's strategic position reveals its spiritual significance. It frames the mosque's northern entrance, aligning perfectly with the Qibla wall so worshippers pass through its shadow before facing Mecca. Medieval travelers wrote of its acoustics, how the arch amplified the muezzin's call, turning Roman engineering into an instrument of devotion. Later Ottoman restorers added their own flourish, cobalt blue tiles that catch the desert light, making the arch appear to float above the courtyard at dawn. Time has tested this monument's resilience. Earthquakes in the 12th and 18th centuries cracked its ribs, only for craftsmen to repair them with a technique called scarping, where new stones were shaved to fit the old like a puzzle. When French Mandate archaeologists attempted to restore its Roman elements in the 1920s, local masons quietly preserved the Islamic additions, recognizing that the arch's power lay in its accumulated history. Today, standing beneath its curve, you're enveloped by whispers of convergence. The scent of olive wood from Roman era beams mingles with the musk of centuries-old prayer rugs. Sunlight filters through latticework installed by Seljuk builders 900 years ago, casting shadows that dance across stones marked with Roman masons' chiseled strokes. This arch doesn't just connect spaces, it dissolves time, proving that sacred ground isn't erased by new faiths, but deepened by their reverence for what came before. In a city that has seen empires rise and fall like desert tides, the Arch of the Umayyads stands as a testament to the radical idea that greatness isn't built from scratch, but woven from the threads of all who touched it. Rising from the heart of Istanbul's skyline, the Arch of the Blue Mosque isn't just a relic, it's a masterclass in architectural alchemy. Originally part of the Great Palace of Constantinople's Hippodrome, this soaring Byzantine arch was seamlessly woven into Sultan Ahmed I's 17th century masterpiece, transforming a symbol of Christian imperial power into the centerpiece of an Islamic sanctuary. The Ottomans didn't just repurpose the arch, they reimagined it, layering centuries of history into a single, harmonious threshold between earth and heaven. Walk beneath its curve today and you're treading on a collision of worlds. The arch's original Byzantine masonry, massive limestone blocks cut with mathematical precision, still forms the bones of the structure, but now it's draped in Ottoman calligraphy and floral Islamic tiles so vivid they seem to breathe. Look closely at the spandrels, where Byzantine artisans once carved crosses and imperial monograms. Ottoman craftsmen inlaid swirling arabesques that mimic the patterns of paradise. The arch's proportions, too, were subtly altered. Byzantine engineers designed it to frame processions of chariots and emperors, but Ottoman architects adjusted its orientation to align with the Qibla, ensuring worshippers would pass through its shadow before facing Mecca. The arch's survival is a tale of pragmatic reverence. When Sultan Ahmed commissioned his mosque in 1609, his builders faced a dilemma: demolish the hippodrome's remaining structures or integrate them. The choice to preserve the arch wasn't just practical, it was poetic. By incorporating this Byzantine artifact, the Ottomans asserted a continuity of power, positioning themselves not as conquerors erasing the past, but as inheritors of a grand tradition. The arch's original Greek inscriptions were left intact, though now flanked by Quranic verses in gold-threaded calligraphy, creating a dialogue across faiths etched in stone. What's most striking is how the arch manipulates light, a shared obsession of both Byzantine and Ottoman designers. The original builders positioned it to catch the sunrise during equinoxes, flooding the hippodrome with golden light. Centuries later, Ottoman architects took this further, embedding stained glass windows above the arch that cast prismatic reflections onto the mosque's prayer rugs, transforming sunlight into sacred geometry. Even the acoustics were refined. The dome's curvature amplifies the muezzin's call, sending vibrations through the same stones that once echoed with Byzantine chants. Time has only deepened the arch's symbolism. During excavations in the 1950s, restorers discovered something astonishing. Beneath the Ottoman tilework, hidden for 300 years, were faint traces of Byzantine frescoes depicting the Virgin Mary. Rather than whitewashing them, conservators preserved these ghosts under protective glaze, a silent acknowledgement that beauty transcends creed. Today, when the call to prayer rings out beneath this arch, it doesn't drown out history, it harmonizes with it, proving that true grandeur isn't built by erasing the past, but by letting its whispers guide the future. The Arch of the Citadel in Aleppo stood for centuries as a silent witness to the ebb and flow of empires until one brutal decade reduced it to fragments. This wasn't just any gateway, it was the monumental entrance to Aleppo's towering fortress, a structure so ancient its foundations whispered with Hittite, Hellenistic, and Byzantine voices before the Ayyubids crowned it with that iconic arch in the 13th century. To pass beneath its towering Muqarnas vault was to step through a timeline etched in stone. Arabic calligraphy curled around Roman columns, Crusader-era battle scars hid beneath Mamluk restorations, and Ottoman cannons once guarded its flanks. The arch didn't just lead to a castle, it was a Rosetta Stone of civilizations, each layer a dialogue between conquerors who'd learned to build atop rather than erase what came before. Then came the war. In 2012, as Syria unraveled, the citadel became a battleground. Shells meant for fighters pounded the arch's ancient stones, their explosions leaving craters where intricate arabesques once spiraled. The northern tower collapsed first, dragging sections of the arch's inscription, a proud tribute to Sultan al-Zahir Ghazi, into the dust. Looters chiseled away at surviving reliefs, black market traders smuggling pieces of the arch's identity into private collections. What centuries of earthquakes and invasions couldn't achieve, modern weapons accomplished in months, the near-total erasure of a masterpiece that had survived Saladin's armies and Mongol sieges. Yet even in ruin, the arch refuses to be silenced. Archaeologists sifting through the rubble made a startling discovery. Beneath the Ayyubid masonry lay the ghost of a Roman propylaeum, its Corinthian capitals preserved like time capsules. The war's destruction inadvertently revealed deeper layers of Aleppo's story, proving the site had always been a phoenix, rising in new forms after each catastrophe. Local stonemasons trained in ancient techniques are now piecing together salvageable fragments using 13th-century manuals preserved in Damascus libraries. Their work isn't just reconstruction, it's an act of defiance, stitching history back together with mortar mixed from the same quarries that supplied the original builders. What haunts most isn't the arch's physical loss, but the erasure of its role as Aleppo's living room. For generations, families gathered in its shadow at sunset. Children traced the Kufic inscriptions with their fingers, and tea vendors knew the exact spot where the arch's curve created a natural acoustic shell, amplifying whispered conversations. That intangible heritage, the hum of daily life resonating through stone, is what truly vanished. Yet from Istanbul to Paris, digital archivists are compiling 3D models from tourist photos and pre-war scans, ensuring the arch's geometry won't be forgotten. The irony is crushing. Modern technology may preserve what modern warfare destroyed, allowing future generations to walk through a virtual reconstruction of the gateway their grandparents once leaned against, laughing as the call to prayer echoed through its vaults. This arch's legacy now hangs in the balance between memory and rebirth. Unlike Palmyra's triumphal arch, painstakingly reassembled with new stone, Aleppo's historians debate whether to rebuild authentically or leave the scars visible, a testament to resilience. Perhaps the most poignant lesson lies in a detail few noticed before the war. High on the arch's interior, a Crusader knight had scratched a tiny cross into the stone during the 12th century occupation. Rather than chisel it out, Muslim restorers centuries later left it untouched, a silent nod to shared history. That tiny mark, now lost in the rubble, whispers what the arch always knew: greatness isn't measured by what endures, but by what we choose to remember. The arch of the Temple of Bolshemin in Palmyra was more than a structure. It was a conversation between civilizations, a delicate fusion of Roman grandeur and Syrian artistry that stood for nearly 2,000 years. Built in the 1st century AD, this soaring gateway framed the entrance to a sanctuary honoring the Phoenician sky god Bolshemin. Its Corinthian columns crowned with intricate floral capitals that seemed to bloom from the desert stone. The arch wasn't just a doorway, it was a testament to Palmyra's role as a cultural crossroads, where caravans carrying silk and spices paused beneath its shadow, and where the faces of Roman emperors peered down from its friezes alongside local deities. The stone bore whispers of countless hands: Arab masons who carved its geometric patterns, Greek engineers who calculated its perfect proportions, and generations of worshippers who traced their fingers over its weathered inscriptions. Then came the unthinkable. In August 2015, ISIS militants rigged the arch with explosives, reducing it to rubble in a blast heard across the archaeological world. The destruction wasn't just an act of vandalism, it was an assault on memory itself, an attempt to sever the thread connecting modern Syria to its multi-layered past. Satellite images in the aftermath showed a crater where the arch once stood, its scattered stones resembling broken vertebrae. For those who'd walked beneath its curve, the loss felt personal, as if a chapter of human creativity had been ripped from the world's shared library. But here's where the story takes an unexpected turn. Even as the dust settled, a coalition of archaeologists, digital artists, and local activists began piecing together the arch's legacy through pixels and perseverance. Using thousands of tourist photos, old excavation sketches, and advanced photogrammetry, the Institute for Digital Archaeology launched an audacious project, recreating the arch as a 20-foot-tall replica, its every detail carved by robotic arms guided by algorithms trained on pre-war imagery. The replica now stands in cities from London to Dubai, a ghostly echo of the original, but also something more, a proof of concept that destruction doesn't have to be permanent. What's often overlooked is how these digital efforts rely on Palmyra's own people. Before the war, Syrian archaeologist Khaled al-Assad spent decades documenting the arch's minutiae, measurements of its column drums, sketches of its weathering patterns. His murder by ISIS in 2015 made global headlines, but his notebooks survived, smuggled out by his students, and now serving as the blueprint for virtual reconstructions. There's poetry in that, the arch's memory preserved by the very man who gave his life protecting it. The digital resurrection goes beyond mere replication. Researchers at Oxford and Harvard have used laser scans of the rubble to create immersive VR experiences, allowing users to walk through the arch's shadow in 360 degrees, hearing the reconstructed acoustics of wind whistling through its columns. Meanwhile, Syrian refugees in Jordan's Zotari camp have participated in workshops teaching them to 3D print miniature versions of the arch, keeping their cultural heritage alive through technology their ancestors could never have imagined. Standing before the replica in London's Trafalgar Square, you notice something haunting. The new arch's stone is pristine, unweathered by centuries of sandstorms. It lacks the patina of history, the grooves worn by generations of hands, yet in its flawless surface we see our own faces reflected. A reminder that heritage isn't just about preserving the past, but about how we choose to carry it forward. The Arch of Bolshemin may be gone, but its story is still being written, not in stone this time, but in the collective determination to prove that beauty outlasts brutality. The Arch of the Alhambra isn't just an entrance, it's a lyrical threshold where mathematics and mysticism intertwine. Framed by the rugged Sierra Nevada mountains, this 14th-century masterpiece stands as the crowning jewel of Nasrid architecture, its horseshoe curve and intricate stucco lacework embodying the very essence of Moorish Spain. Walk beneath its vault and you're enveloped by a symphony of patterns. Tessellated stars bloom across the ceiling, interlocking like celestial puzzles, while Cufic script winds along the spandrels, not merely as decoration but as poetry carved in stone. These inscriptions, quatrains praising the Sultan's wisdom and Allah's grandeur, transform the arch into a living manuscript where every arabesque whispers verses from the Quran alongside odes to the beauty of Granada. What makes this archway extraordinary isn't just its artistry, but its intentional dialogue with the landscape. Unlike Roman triumphal arches that dominate their surroundings, the Alhambra's arch bends gracefully toward the Darro River below, its proportions calculated to frame specific vistas like a painter's composition. The Nasrid designers employed a trick of perspective. The arch's inner curve narrows slightly as it rises, drawing the eye outward to the Generalife Gardens' emerald terraces or the Albayzin district's whitewashed rooftops. This wasn't just architecture, it was visual poetry, a deliberate choreography of stone and horizon. Even the play of light was orchestrated. At midday, sunlight filters through the pierced stucco, casting kaleidoscopic shadows that shift with the seasons, as if the arch itself breathes with time. The materials tell their own story. The reddish clay of Granada's earth mixed with gypsum gives the stucco its warm glow, a hue locals call Alhambra gold. Tiny fragments of crushed quartz were kneaded into the plaster, making the surfaces shimmer like crushed gemstones under candlelight, and those geometric patterns. They're more than ornamentation. Each interlocking shape, the 12-pointed stars, the hexagonal grids, reflects the Islamic world's advanced understanding of mathematics, their infinite repeatability symbolizing the eternal nature of the divine. It's no accident that modern physicists study these designs, recognizing in their fractal-like complexity a precursor to quantum geometry. Time has only deepened the arch's mystique. After the Christian Reconquista, the Catholic monarchs preserved the Alhambra's Islamic artistry, though later additions like the nearby Palace of Charles V stand in stark contrast. Their heavy Renaissance lines a deliberate counterpoint to the Nasrid's ethereal elegance. 19th-century Romantic writers like Washington Irving immortalized the arch in prose, spinning tales of hidden treasure and star-crossed lovers, while contemporary conservators face a silent battle against Granada's humid winters, which slowly dissolve the delicate plaster like sugar in water. Standing beneath the arch at twilight, when the last sunbeams set the inscriptions aflame, you understand why the Nasrids called this place paradise on earth. The arch doesn't just frame a view, it dissolves the boundary between garden and palace, earth and sky, human creation and divine inspiration. The next time you see a photo of its famed horseshoe curve, look past the postcard perfection. Those faint tool marks along the spandrels, They're the fingerprints of craftsmen who knew their work would outlast dynasties, a silent pact between mortal hands and eternity. The Arch of the Americas in Mexico City shatters expectations, a mid-20th century monument that doesn't imitate its ancient predecessors but converses with them across centuries. Unveiled in 1950 as part of the Pan-American Highway project, this sleek marble arch reimagines Mesoamerican grandeur through the lens of modernist minimalism. Where pre-Columbian arches like those at Cholum or Xochicalco embraced intricate glyphs and cosmological alignments, architect Carlos Obregón Santacilia stripped his design to its geometric essence, a stark white parabola soaring 130 feet without a single decorative carving. Yet look closer, and you'll spot the genius of its subtle tributes. The arch's exact 45-degree slope mirrors the angles of Teotihuacan's Pyramid of the Moon, while its hollow core channels the same interplay of light and shadow that defined sacred Maya doorways as thresholds between worlds. This arch's true innovation lies in its synthesis of timelines. The marble cladding nods to Spanish colonial cathedrals, but its unadorned surface rejects European ornamentation in favor of something bolder, a blank canvas inviting viewers to project their own heritage onto it. Unlike Roman triumphal arches shouting imperial glory, the Arch of the Americas whispers inclusivity, its dedication plaque naming all 21 American republics in alphabetical order. Even its location is a masterstroke, straddling the Calzada de los Misterios, an ancient causeway that once led pilgrims to the Basilica of Guadalupe. It physically bridges pre-Hispanic processional routes with modern traffic arteries. Modern engineers faced challenges their ancestors never imagined. The arch's cantilevered design, appearing to float without visible supports, required hidden steel reinforcements to withstand Mexico City's frequent earthquakes. Yet in a poetic twist, builders sourced the marble from the same quarries that supplied stone for Aztec temples, literally repurposing the bones of the old world to cradle the new. The arch's inauguration ceremony underscored this duality. Indigenous dancers performed under its span while jets from the Mexican Air Force streaked overhead, their contrails sketching temporary glyphs across the sky. By night, the arch transforms into a luminous time capsule. Spotlights beam upward through its hollow center, casting a geometric shadow that recalls both an Aztec sundial and the headlights of endless cars streaming beneath it. Teenagers sprawl on its steps at midnight, their laughter echoing where priests once chanted. This is the arch's quiet rebellion. It doesn't just honor history, it insists on being lived in, proving that monuments gain meaning not from what they commemorate, but from the lives that unfold around them. The next time you see its silhouette against the smog-streaked sunset, don't just see an arch, see a conversation, one where Olmec sculptors, Spanish masons, and Mexican futurists all get a seat at the table. These archways we've journeyed through aren't just stone and mortar, they're frozen conversations across centuries, each curve and carving a voice from civilizations that dared to build the impossible. From the propaganda-laden reliefs of Rome's triumphal arches to the celestial mathematics woven into the Alhambra's stucco, these portals defy time by revealing what their builders valued most: power, faith, trade, or simply the audacity to leave a mark that outlasts them. Some stood as warnings, like the Arch of Titus, its spoils from Jerusalem a stark reminder of conquest's cost. Others, like the Arch of the Sergii, whisper intimate family legacies, proof that even in empires, personal love could carve itself into eternity. And then there are the lost ones, like Palmyra's Arch of Bolshemin, whose digital rebirths remind us that destruction doesn't erase memory, it only changes how we choose to remember. What's astonishing isn't just their diversity, but how they mirror the societies that birthed them. The Roman obsession with military dominance, the Umayyad flair for blending cultures, the Tiwanaku's celestial precision. Each archway is a cultural fingerprint. Even the scars they bear tell stories. The Arch of the Argentarii's erased faces show politics' ruthlessness, while Aleppo's shattered citadel arch stands as a testament to both war's brutality and humanity's stubborn will to rebuild. These structures weren't meant to be passive monuments. They were active participants in history, shaping how people moved, worshipped, and even how they saw themselves. For those hungry to stand where empires once clashed or artists once dreamed, these archways still beckon. Walk beneath the Arch of Constantine at golden hour, and you'll feel the weight of Rome's pivot to Christianity. Trace your fingers over the gateway of the sun's enigmatic carvings, and you're touching a civilization's dialogue with the cosmos. And for the arches lost to time or violence, like Leptes Magna's Severan Arch or Alexander Severus's vanished masterpiece, explore their 3D reconstructions, where technology stitches fragments back into something whole, if only on a screen. If this journey through thresholds of history resonated with you, don't let it end here. Hit that like button if you learned something unexpected. Subscribe to join us as we keep unearthing the world's hidden stories, and drop a comment below. Tell us which archway captivated you most, or shout out a lesser-known gateway we should explore next. After all, history isn't just something we study, it's something we step through, one arch at a time.